a lot of adult animated sitcoms in the world, and you can thank The Simpsons for that, to which they can thank The Flintstones for that, to which they can thank The Honeymooners for that, to which they can thank domestic abuse for that. Yeah, that's what he meant, folks. Bang, boom, straight to the moon, and 3 to 5 in jail.
That's not an astronaut, it's a TV comedian. And he was just using space travel as a metaphor for beating his wife.
Needless to say, the success of The Simpsons launched a new genre for animation, and many companies and studios wanted a piece of that pie. They still do to this very day. That's why we see so many adult animated shows in the world, and most of them are family sitcoms. So many family sitcoms. But there was one show that was very different, but also, at the exact same time, nothing really new. Father of the Bride. Released in August of 2004 on NBC, Father of the Bride was thought to be the next big thing, a show that could possibly rival The Simpsons, or even surpass it. It had big names working on it. It had a massive amount of advertising and promotion. It had anthropomorphic lions. Why does this keep happening to me? Why am I cursed with these anthropomorphic lions for the rest of my life?
I don't get it.
But despite all of its momentum and support, the series only lasted one season and was a total failure. So what happened? Why wasn't Father of the Bride a huge success? Heck, it even had backing from DreamWorks. And this was even during their glory days with Shrek. I mean, Donkey even has a guest appearance in this show. I am not kidding. See for yourself.
Do you know how many times I had to hear donkey is an ass, donkey is an ass? All right, I get it. They're synonyms. I hate synonyms, Larry. You know what I do love, though? Parfaits. Do you like parfaits, Larry? But no buts, Larry. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. But let your kid know that Shrek 3 is coming out in 2006. Liar!
Father of the Bride was thought up by Jeffrey Katzenberg back in 2002. He's one of the head people of DreamWorks Animation and a complainer extraordinaire. He came up with the premise for Father of the Bride while watching a Siegfried and Roy show in Las Vegas. According to him, he thought, quote, "I wonder what it's like for those lions. What life must be like from their point of view. They're living in Las Vegas, trying to raise a family and earn a living." In animation, we look for those things. A way to look at our lives through a fantasy world. It allows us to take on subjects that are too difficult to do with real— I'm gonna laugh because I have a edit coming up that I'm gonna shit all over DreamWorks. A way to look at our lives through a fantasy world. It allows us to take on subjects that are too difficult to do with real people. It allows us to be more controversial, edgier. There can be parody and innuendo and satire. Things can be sophisticated in a way that even our feature films can't. This is an odd premise. A show based on Siegfried and Roy and their animals? Okay. For those who don't know who they are, Siegfried and Roy are this old Las Vegas act where they would take their animals and their magic and combine it into one single show. It was very successful. I think it actually might be the most successful show in Vegas history. All of these larger-than-life things were coming together for the show. And the icing on the cake? This show was going to have computer animation. Boom! That'll make it stand out. Computer animation was on the rise during this time. It was the new, trendy thing to do. It was overrunning 2D animation on the theatrical scene. So, why not take it to television with adult animated shows as well? It just makes sense, right? Well, yeah, actually. I can see where they're coming from with this approach. Like, take kid cartoons, for example. They were handling CGI around that time just fine, and still do to this very day. So I can see why NBC and Katzenberg wanted to try their own hand with an adult animated CGI show. No one else has really done that before. Well, I mean, there were some shows that tried, but none of them stuck. You got like Tripping the Rift, Game Over, the acid trip that was Xavier Renegade Angel, but none of them were massive hits. CGI animation, despite all of its success in every other genre of animation, never got much of a foothold with adult CGI shows. But NBC was dead set on making Father of the Bride succeed. It pushed it hard on the advertising front and even promoted it during their coverage of the 2004 Summer Olympics. Oh God, furry lions and the Olympics. I'm having flashbacks.
And break his concentration.
Anybody who watched NBC around this time knew about this upcoming show. But something happened during the production and promotion for the show that no one expected. The infamous tiger attack.
For the first time today, Roy Horn's neurosurgeon talked to the media and said it's all but miraculous the illusionist is still alive after he was attacked by one of his tigers.
In October of 2003, Roy was attacked and severely injured by one of the tigers from the magic show. It did massive damage to his spine, and he also had a stroke too. Like, he almost died, folks. Though he was very forgiving to the tiger. Apparently, when he was being dragged off, he was saying things like, "Leave the tiger alone. It didn't know any better. It's just a tiger. Leave it alone," or something like that. There is a ton of drama after the fact of like what happened, but I won't talk about it. All you need to know is that this incident would lead to Siegfried and Roy ending their magic show, which did not bode well for Father of the Pride. Apparently, NBC was ready to scrap the show because of what happened. But Siegfried and Roy were like, "No, don't do it. But let's still do this cartoon. Please, we insist on it." So NBC still went forward with it and saw the series through to completion. Props to Siegfried and Roy for being cool about it. From what I read, they were very helpful during the production of the series, loved to give feedback and ideas, and in light of what happened with the tiger, they were very chill. You'd think they'd be like, "No, pull the plug, we're done here." But no, they said, "Let's keep going." And on August 31st, 2004, Father of the Pride made its debut to the world and was initially very successful, but it rapidly declined in the ratings. Eventually, it was pulled from its lineup and would not be revived for another season. Despite all of the resources and momentum in its corner, it wasn't enough, and Father of the Pride was a failure.
Mr. Wright's the only man who loves me. Aren't you, Mr. Wright? Boogie boogie boo.
All right, so we've talked about the rise and the fall of the show, but what about the show itself? Well, I bought the complete series on Amazon, so I can watch it and upload a quality version for this review. Guess what? Only one side of the DVD worked, so that's why half of these episodes are like, kind of okay, and the other ones are not at all. Fuck you, DVD. All right, whatever. Father of the Pride is about a family of white lions who live in Las Vegas and who work for Siegfried and Roy. They live off-site in this animal compound with a bunch of other creatures who also work on the show. There's Larry, the father, lazy, chubby, and kind of a dummy, though he means well. There's Kate, the mom. She's much more straight-laced and primarily takes care of the kids. Also, she has purple eyebrows. There's Sierra, the teenage daughter. Rebellious, open-minded, embarrassed by her family. You know, that cookie-cutter character trope. Then there's Hunter, the younger brother who's geeky and out of touch with the cool kids. He loves Lord of the Rings, which automatically makes him the best character in my book. Oh, you poor child. I was just like you when I was your age. I'm still that way. And finally, there's the grandfather, Sarmati. Though I'm pretty sure I'm saying his name wrong. Whatever, Sarmati. That's what we're going to call him. He's Kate's dad and was the previous star of Siegfried and Roy's show until Larry took over. Now he spends his time criticizing Larry and hanging out with his grandkids and his daughter. Oh, and of course, there's Siegfried and Roy. They're in the show as themselves, though Siegfried and Roy don't voice themselves. Usually, they take up the B-plot of the show and go off on crazy adventures. Unironically, and I mean this, they are the best part of the series. You would think that the talking lions would be more interesting, but no, it's these two guys. They're just so wide-eyed, charismatic, impulsive, and magical. They are completely disconnected from reality, and they don't know how to act around normal people. There's one episode where they go to a 7-Eleven and the place just blows their mind. Oh, what's this? It is a big gulp. Oh my gosh. By the way, shameless product placement, but whatever. You got them at the 7-Eleven. They're all about the big gulps and the hot dogs, and they just, they're nuts. They don't know what they're doing, yet they do know what they're doing. It's, again, so strange that in a show with talking anthropomorphic lions, that the two humans are much more interesting.
It will not be easy, Kittis, but at least you are not taking your addiction lying down.
What did I tell you about puns?
Outside of the main cast, you got this ensemble of side characters who, real talk, I don't give a shit about. None of them made an impression on me. Like, there's the best friend of Larry, who is a gopher called Snack, voiced by Orlando Jones. And he just seems so generic and forgettable and tropey. I've seen this done before and much better. And on top of that, you also have some celebrity cameos like Matt Lauer and Kelsey Grammer, though none of them felt very well utilized. Like, they're there, but again, not getting much of an impression here. Oh, and Danny DeVito shows up as a lobster. That was interesting.
I didn't survive 3,472 dinners by making small talk with prostitutes.
Hey, I'm not a prostitute.
Yeah. You're working your way through law school. I get it.
I'm being forgetful. The best cameo in this entire series was Donkey from Shrek. Like, legitimately, there was an episode where Donkey shows up as Donkey, the celebrity from Shrek. I even think they got Eddie Murphy to voice him. He's like walking around, being a big old hotshot celebrity at the animal compound. Larry's trying to get Donkey to be like, hey, we're friends. That way, Larry seems cool to his son. And it was just so weird because look at these designs. They are not from the same universe. The sky looks very different compared to Donkey, and yet here we are. God damn you, DreamWorks.
Freaks, this guy made $15 million for Shrek 2!
All right, let's go over my 5 points. First, the story. Or I suppose, stories, since this is a series. First off, I do not care for the premise of this show. Despite being unique and different, like I'll give it that, it doesn't click with me. If anything, I see this setting as a hindrance. Like, you are in Las Vegas. This town is supposed to be crazy and wild, and yet you all don't really do that much with it. Instead, you have this weird, pseudo-anthropomorphic animal compound, which is like okay for like the world you're trying to set up outside of Vegas, but you all get stuck in it way too often. And honestly, it doesn't really stand out that much. It's just a village of animal performers, which like that should sound more interesting. That should be more meaningful to me, but it's not. And you all know me. I am a fan of anthropomorphic animals, or just animals in general, being used in stories. When used correctly, it can do wonders for a story. But here, I feel like they ignored their potential. As far as the main characters go, it wasn't anything new. The chubby, lazy dad, the sexy, nagging wife, the rebellious teenager, the criticizing grandparent. This has been done so many times before. So if you're gonna do it again, try to make it stand out. And guess what? They weren't able to accomplish this goal. Adult animated shows, for the most part, fall back on their characters and writing. And if that fails to connect with the audience, then the show itself usually fails altogether. And that's what happened here. I was waiting for the moment when the show might rise above my expectations, where the characters might become more than just tropes and be something fresh and different. Like Dinosaur, the show with the giant like rubber suits and whatnot, that show's first season was tropey. But then the show became more than that. It became different. It grew its own personality, and I enjoy that show. It was able to break the mold. But for Father of the Pride, it wasn't able to do that. And that's a damn shame. When it comes to the lion characters, the only episodes that were somewhat interesting to me were the ones that focused on the grandfather and the grandson. They kind of have this Hank and Bobby Hill chemistry going on, but it was different enough to not be an exact clone. I truly wish they would have built on that, but oh well.
Hey kids, what if I buy you some beer? It'll be our secret, huh?
There's no alcohol in Middle Earth, Grandpa.
Crap.
Objection!
Next, there's the voice acting. No complaints. I thought the voice acting was just fine. I mean, if anything, there's some good performances in this show. You got John Goodman as Larry, and he always does a great job. Like, John Goodman is a good actor. He tries his best. He kind of reminds me of Samuel L. Jackson and how, like, Samuel will do his best no matter the role. John's the same way. Compare this to other actors who definitely phoned it in. Harrison Ford. You got some other big names on this show. Cheryl Hines, Daniel Harris, the little boy from Spy Kids. Yeah, remember that movie? And of course, there's the legendary actor himself, Carl Reiner, who, just like John, gave 100%.
Oh, Larry, I want you to know that if I've been tough to live with in any way, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
What are you looking at? Unless you're giving out happy endings, get out of my way.
After that, there's the dialogue. There's a lot of humor in this show that is very much so, like, of its time. This is early 2000s humor. I recall there was like one joke in the show where a snail's like tells a bad joke and then he just goes, "Well, you're gay." And it's like, ooh, what? That's not even funny. It's just outrageously stupid. And yet when I think about when this show came out, it makes so much sense why the comedy of this show, why the dialogue of this show is the way it is.
My boss fired me yesterday. I started to cry. My boss said I can't watch a grown man cry, so I gave him a blindfold. Kapow!
That was terrible.
Yeah, and you're gay.
To be fair, I did get some chuckles, mostly from Siegfried and Roy, but also Larry had some good one-liners. The grandfather character had some good lines. There are jokes in this show and exchanges of dialogue that are funny, like actual laugh-out-loud humor. Here's the downside, though. There's not enough of that to make this show stand up on its own two legs. A show needs to be more than just funny exchanges. You need meaningful characters. You need fun stories. This isn't just a bunch of short-form content and jokes. You need more than that. So again, for the dialogue, it was fine. It was funny. And it got better throughout the show, but again, it's not enough to establish a show on its own.
Larry, I'm weak. I need the attention. I'm a whore. I'm a whore for the applause. And you wouldn't hit a whore, would you, Larry?
Then there's the editing. The music was generic. I didn't really care for it. Just kind of forgettable. Same thing with the sound effects. Just overall, the editing, like, it did its job to help the show, like, make the show, if that makes any sense. As in, they put the show together. Some of the scenes run over a bit where they can be, I would say, shortened. It's funny because there's the entire idea that you can't edit an animated movie. And ironically, the guy who created this show is on record, Jeffrey Katzenberg, with saying, "Yes, you can, I'll show you how." Because when Katzenberg first arrived at Disney back in the 80s, it was a complete mess. He said that these old movies, like The Black Cauldron, are way too long, and he said, "I'll edit it." And the folks who worked on The Black Cauldron were like, "You can't edit an animated film?" And he's like, "Bitch, I'll show you." So yes, I get the idea that some shows, animated shows and movies are edited, obviously, because there's reasons why there are deleted scenes. But at the same time, when it comes to the pacing of a show, which is where I see editing at its most, at the front runner, this is when editing really shines as how you can help with the pacing of a show. That's where here I feel like it is sufficient, but not outstanding. Again, I feel like if they had better characters and stories to work with, it could be more noticeable. But for what it is, the editing is just meh. You did your job, whatever. Let's move on. Because finally, we get to the animation. Dun 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 dun. Let's talk about the animation. Why not? The non-main characters look awful. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say it. I think they look bad. They look like they're cereal box mascots. Not even that. At least Tony the Tiger looks good.
My mom knows Tony the Tiger. She took a nap with him.
But these characters who are not just background characters, but side characters, they look bland and forgettable and generic characters. I keep saying generic, but that's the truth. This flamingo is a recurring character, but you wouldn't think so from seeing him. Now, if he had a good character and good stories to back him up, then he could make more of an impression on me, but that isn't the case. The writing and the character designs aren't there, so it's just completely forgettable in its entirety. Same thing with like the snack character, not snack as in S-N-A-C-C, but as in S-N-A-C-K. He's, again, forgettable in my opinion. I feel like outside of the main cast of lions and the elephant, who is only noticeable because he's an elephant, and of course Siegfried and Roy, everybody else is forgettable. It's orangutan, it's chimpanzee, it's just a bunch of background and side characters who blend in together because they don't stand out. Like, look at Penguins of Madagascar. Look at Madagascar in general. Those movies have stylized animals that look different and cartoony. But here, it's not doing it for me. They don't seem creative. It just either falls into the realm of, okay, you made a flamingo or you made a chimp, and that's not enough for me to remember them because the writing doesn't really make an impression on me either. In its entirety, from character to design to a combination of the two, it just doesn't make an impression on me, and that's a problem.
Wrong answer.
Forgive me, Mahatma.
Now, as far as like the textures, the hair effects, the background designs and whatnot, and the assets that are in the shots with like the way the home is designed, I think it's competent for the time. I don't think it's aged very well, and there's a reason why most of these adult animated shows are 2D and not 3D. But for what it's worth, I thought it was okay for the time. Once more, it hasn't aged very well, but it's okay. Like, compare hair effects. Around this time, you've got, because the show came out in 2004. The show went into production in 2002. Around this time, you've got Sully, funny enough, John Goodman, from Pixar. His fur is like one of the biggest deals with computer animation at that time. Oh my God, look how real it looks. Then you've got the lion manes in this show, which again, don't look bad. They don't look anything as good as Sully's fur, of course. But again, for their fur, it's okay. It's all right, it's sufficient. But now you compare it to nowadays, and what we've accomplished today will blow this stuff out of the water. So I give them points for trying. I don't think it's aged that badly, but it's definitely showing its age. Also, some of these sets with the backgrounds, they feel a bit empty to me. And in combination with these characters, like, I get that there's color in these scenes with these characters, but for whatever reason, and I can't quite put my finger on it because I'm also stupid, but I feel like these scenes and these characters look bland. I don't really feel like it's popping out to me. Compare this to like Reboot, funny enough. I feel that show pops a bit more. Same thing with current shows like Miraculous Ladybug, where you've got characters and backgrounds and assets that pop and look good. But for here, when I watch this show, it just feels bland. Just kind of a big old pot of blandness. But to be fair, I do want to give props to this show. It did something that I very much so appreciate. So, when it comes to the show, Siegfried and Roy are humans. They talk to the animals, but the animals don't talk back to them. It's like the animals have their own world where they then turn into anthropomorphic characters, and then they have the world where they communicate with the humans, and in that world, they remain as animals. It's really interesting how they did this, but to be fair, because they went the extra mile here, I'm pretty sure that they had two versions of character models for the main characters. A version where they are actual lions walking on all fours, and then a version where they're anthropomorphic. Because when I see Larry walk on all fours, his chest seems bigger, his stomach seems smaller, his stomach doesn't drag on the ground. But when you see him on his hind legs, in the anthropomorphic sense, his belly's huge, his chest is small, and I see that, or I believe that they have two models that they interchange. So I appreciate that. They went the extra mile. Thank you so much. Looks much better than Sheep and Wolves, where you just got this one character model who walks on their small hind legs but also runs on all fours at times, because that makes sense.
That doesn't make any sense.
All right, so how would I improve the show? Honestly, this show was doomed to fail from the start. The premise just isn't that interesting. I know adult sitcoms don't need mind-blowing premises to work, since they depend mostly on good characters and writing. But still, the premise just doesn't do it for me, and it puts the animals in a weird box with this animal compound. Again, you've got Las Vegas. Let them get lost in Las Vegas. Let them get caught up with a bunch of gangsters or even prostitutes. Let them get to a casino and get in some gambling troubles where they pretend to be humans and they start winning all the winnings, but they cheated, and all the casinos are like, get after those guys. Oh my God, they're actually lions or something. Like, I know that Reno 911 isn't about Vegas, it's about Reno, duh. But you kind of get that Las Vegas vibe from Reno 911. And I see that show as a better example of them understanding their surroundings of, we take place in Reno. Here is why it is crazy. Here are all of our adventures with our officers running into issues and crazy stories by being in Reno as officers. Again, these lines are in Vegas. There should be no shortage of stories and craziness here. And if anything, it's not the lions who really get caught up in Vegas, it's Siegfried and Roy. But even then, they're crazy enough on their own where you can throw them into a 7-Eleven and it works. You don't need them really going to these super long lengths of craziness in Vegas itself, because they themselves are a product of Vegas. I know that sounds confusing. It's almost like you have the craziness of Siegfried and Roy on one side of the scale, so you want to put them in normal settings, and then you've got the craziness of the lions on the other scale, but they're kind of normal because they're a family. So take that family unit and throw them into the crazy realm of Vegas. That's just my advice. I feel like the show got close to trying to approach that premise from that point of view, but not nearly enough to succeed with it.
Blah.
Dude, uncool.
To be fair, though, Father of the Pride initially did well with its ratings. It got like 12.5 million people watching it when it first debuted. But unfortunately, those ratings plummeted as the show went on. Like at the end, it was pulled from its lineup. If I'm correct, they even pulled some episodes. Katzenberg was like, well, I don't think there's going to be a season 2 because this show is not doing well. And yeah, it just kind of had failure written all over it. Despite all of the promotions, despite all of the advertising, despite having the blessings of Katzenberg, Siegfried and Roy, having good actors like Carl Reiner and John Goodman and good people working on this, it wasn't enough. It goes to show you that you can have all of the blessings in the world, but if you do not have a good idea and how to follow through with it properly, it will fail. And I think that they could have salvaged it. Maybe the show needed a second season to finally spread its wings and breathe a bit. If you watch King of the Hill season 1, The Simpsons season 1, shows like that, they change as they go on. They become different. They can explore themselves and have more fun with the characters as they establish the setting. So maybe this show needed some more time, but who can say? All I know is that tiger attack from Siegfried and Roy couldn't have come at a worse time. Of course, my heart goes out to Roy for suffering a tiger attack. That sucks for him, but I do wonder if that itself was the main reason why people were turned off to this show. It is such a wild card thing to happen. I'm not really even sure how you can quantify that, but it happened. I personally think that was a big reason why folks saw this show in a different light, and some people were turned off by it, along with everything else I've been saying up to this point.
Hey, we should take the word God out of the Pledge of Allegiance.
My country, right or wrong, love it or leave it.
So, in conclusion, Father of the Pride isn't a bad show. If anything, it's a big, expensive CGI show that bet on the wrong horse. I give them credit for attempting something different, but it just wasn't enough for them at the end of the day. There are too many parts about this show that were lackluster and meh to me. Just completely meh, generic, tropey stuff that brought the rest of the show down with it. And there were much better shows worth watching around that time. If anything, the show's existence itself and how it came to be is much more fascinating than the show itself. Talking about computer animation being used in this way, seeing DreamWorks and Katzenberg back it up, seeing Siegfried and Roy try to use their brand for a cartoon show, and then seeing it backfire and having the unfortunate drama of a tiger attack that almost killed you, that's just insanity. Again, the road to completion for this show is incredibly crazy, and I personally think it's much more fascinating than the actual show. So for what it's worth, I will give Father of the Pride props for trying to do something different. It wasn't awful. I think some folks would like it. So if y'all want to check it out, give it a shot. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. And yes, folks, I realize this is like the 10th animated show or movie that has to do with lions that I've reviewed on my channel. When we get to number 13, my head will actually explode. So yeah, keep your punch cards ready. At number 13, my head explodes and everybody gets a free ice cream cone. That's the price you pay when you play with a furry devil.
Magic, you fickle bitch.